Yes. A very good morning to all of you. Before starting the session, let me introduce Dr. Ranjit Kumar Sahu, our expert guest for today. Dr. Ranjit Kumar Sahu works as an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Karnataka, Surathkal. Sir has received his Bachelor of Engineering degree in 2003 and MTech in 2011 from NIT Rourkela and have been awarded with his doctoral degree in 2016 from IIT Madras. Sir has about 10 years of teaching experience and has been carrying out 3 research projects under DST Government of India. Sir has about 16 international journals and 16 conference proceedings. He has authored 1 book and 2 book chapters also. Sir has applied for 2 patents, out of which one is granted and another is under examination. Sir is a very popular invited speaker and has delivered various talks at various places. Sir has guided 11 BTech and 5 MTech students and is guiding 5 PhD students and 1 MTech student presently. Sir has served as the product development head of QIS College of Engineering and Technology, Andhra Pradesh, and also served as a faculty research establishment head in Machine Shop Manufacturing Division, Department of Mechanical Engineering at SRM University. Sir has also designed a new course that is Advanced Micro Machining Systems AMMS SDC model for undergraduate students. Sir is also a member of various professional bodies like International Association of Engineers, International Association of Computer Science and Information Technology, etc. Sir has been honored with many awards like APJ Abdul Kalam Award for Young Scientist 2018, Marine Labs Research and Development in association with CSIR Chennai, and Professor MS Sangamukham Best PhD Thesis Award at IIT Madras in 2016. Sir was a recipient of Ministry of Human Resource Development Scholarship at IIT Madras from 2011 to 2015 and recipient of Ministry of Human Resource Development Scholarship again at NIT Rourkela from 2009 to 2011. Sir was an extraordinary student and has been awarded as Best MTech in Mechanical Engineering in NIT Rourkela in 2012 and has ranked in the top 8% in All India GATE exam in 2009. His current research area includes micro and nano machining, nanomaterial synthesis, precision engineering, and additive manufacturing. Sir is going to deliver his talk on the topic Corona Discharge Advanced Manufacturing Technique for production and characterization of novel materials and their optimization using an artificial smart system approach. Welcome, sir, and thank you for joining.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Devasmita Madam, for briefing my biodata. Am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, first of all, I express my heartfelt thanks to the Vice Chancellor VSSUT Burla, Head Department of Mechanical Engineering, and also I am too much grateful to the coordinators of this program, in specific Dr. Devasmita Misram and Dr. Santosh Sahu sir, for giving me an opportunity to deliver a topic in the area of novel materials like fabrication, simulation, characterization, etc. So, shall I share the link now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I am sharing this link. Now, is it visible to all of you?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. So today I'm going to deliver a topic which is entitled Corona Discharge Advanced Manufacturing Technique for Production and Characterization of Novel Materials and their optimization using an artificial smart system approach. So, my dear participant, actually, I am not feeling well for the last 3 4 days. I am suffering from the chicken pox fever. So, if there is any discrepancy, is there, please let me know. So in this topic, the corona discharge, advanced manufacturing technique. First of all, this corona discharge is nothing but it is an electrical glow, or we can say when a sun starts to rise, when the sun ray falls, you can see surrounding the sun some glow will be there. Am I right? So that is nothing but we can say it is an electrical glow. So the corona discharge in a technical sense, we can define it in such a fashion. It is the sudden discharge of electrons. When the electrons are suddenly discharging in the form of light, that we can call it as a corona discharge. Okay, that means we can say it is a sudden discharge of electrons in the form of light. Okay, so based on this corona discharge, okay, one of the advanced manufacturing technique is there. That means there are a lot of advanced manufacturing techniques are available till date. Among them, a corona discharge based advanced manufacturing technique. I would like to speak about this thing, which is recently addressed for the production of novel materials. Novel materials, for example, we can say the nanomaterials. In specific, we can say it is a nanoparticles. So by using this corona discharge based advanced manufacturing technique, how we have produced the nanoparticles, which are so called as a novel material, or we can call it as an extraordinary material or unique material. Then I will show you some snapshot about the characterization of these materials. And finally, that means that those characteristics of the nanoparticles which has been produced by using this corona discharge based advanced manufacturing technique. Okay, that means we have exploited a new approach, that is we can call it as an artificial smart system approach to optimize the characteristics, or we can say the performance characteristics of the nanomaterials. Okay, so this is the outline of the lecture. At the outset, I would like to give a brief background of conventional manufacturing, followed by what is the need for advanced manufacturing techniques and their classification. Then the advent of nanotechnology, that means the arrival of the concept of nanotechnology in the field of corona discharge advanced manufacturing technique. So in this content, I would like to speak about the introduction to nanotechnology, then novel nanoparticles production techniques. What are the techniques are available to produce the novel nanoparticles? Okay. Then exploration of this corona discharge micromachining. This CTMM is nothing but it is one of the advanced manufacturing technique. That's why we are calling it a corona discharge based advanced manufacturing technique. It is in particular, you can call it as a corona discharge micromachining technique, which is one of the advanced manufacturing technique, which is recently explored for the production of nanoparticles. This one I will deliver in the forthcoming slides. Then finally, a spotlight on the artificial smart system for optimal nanoparticles characterized. One by one, we will discuss, then we will come to know. First of all, the background of conventional manufacturing. See, my dear audience, we know that the manufacturing is nothing but to create something or to make something using various techniques. This is very fundamental. In early days, that manufacturing remained as a craft for low volume and single piece production. Okay, it was a slow and expensive process those days because of there is no machines, or we can say absence of machines. But when you are switching over in 18th century, through the use of hydropower and the increased use of the steam power, the efficiency of the mechanical production was improved. However, in this millennium, with the advent of electricity, better engineering materials, then the advent of machine tools, and the development of automobiles, a wide variety of manufacturing techniques have been developed for mass production of the components or parts. Okay, so that manufacturing, that means nowadays we can call it that it is a background, or we can say it is the backbone of any industrialized nation. Okay, this manufacturing is the backbone of any industrialized nation. It is a vital ingredient of engineering sciences that provides various products or objects that are essential for the humankind. Okay, so when you will see these objects around you, for example, or we can say the products around you, for example, pen, wristwatch, then cell phone, calculator, laptop, chairs, then this screw, then drill bits, nuts, bolts, nails, then refrigerator, washing machine, then this our air conditioning unit, engine blocks, etc. When you see these objects or products, you will realize that each of these products or objects have a different shape and size at one time. Okay, so these products or these objects are either made of a single part or by assembly of number of parts. You see, for example, the screw, nut, bolts. These product or this object are made of a single part. When you will see this pen, the wristwatches, the cell phone, they are made up by assembly of number of parts. So these products which are made of either a single part or by assembly of number of parts, they are made by converting the raw materials using various technical processes or various manufacturing techniques. So those manufacturing techniques conventionally or we can say traditionally include casting, forming. This casting and forming is nothing but they are the primary manufacturing techniques, that means conventional primary manufacturing techniques. Then other one is joining, machining. And this joining and machining are the secondary manufacturing techniques. Okay, so these manufacturing techniques, that means the traditional or conventional manufacturing techniques, are broadly classified into four groups. I think you people knows this very well enough. So I will give you only brief things here. Under this casting, we know that there is one expandable mold casting, other one is permanent mold casting techniques. So under those techniques like sand, cell, investment, ceramic, dye, centrifugal, slush, etc. Under the forming technique, one is bulk metal forming, other one is sheet metal forming. So under those forming techniques, rolling, forging, white drawing, extrusion, sheet metal. Then under the joining, one is fusion joining process, another non-fusion joining process. So under this, gas welding, arc welding, resistance welding, thermic welding, soldering, brazing. Then we can call it under the non-fusion, we can the friction stir welding, then explosive welding, then what we can say ultrasonic welding, etc. Under the machining techniques, one is we can say that means conventional cutting, other one is conventional finishing. Under the conventional cutting, when you want to make a circular shape, for example, turning process is used or techniques are used, drilling techniques are used. When you want to produce the prismatic shapes or other shapes, you can go for this milling, okay, shaping and planning and broaching techniques. Under the conventional finishing processes, when you're going for the bonded abrasives, you can go for the grinding process, we can go for the honing process. Under the loose abrasives, we can go for the lapping, finish, polishing, etc. Okay, so these conventional manufacturing techniques have met the requirements of the industries over the decades. However, to become successful in today's manufacturing industry, what is the need for advanced manufacturing technique? This is the main content. So, I mean, in order to become successful in today's manufacturing industry, okay, the industry has to meet the various demands rising in the market. In specific, the market demands for exotic materials processing. That means we can say exotic materials are nothing but they are the extraordinary materials, or we can say they are the unique materials, which are very difficult process, so that we can get a definite shape and size. So one of the main demand is the processing of exotic materials into a definite shape and size that can be used for a particular application. Second one is innovative design and manufacture of products. That means we can call it the general purpose products or intricate or complex products with least human intervention in minimal time and with less cost. That is also one of the important demand. Third demand is miniaturized products. That means we can say miniaturized means we can say very small size products, or we can say ultra fine products. That we can say micron size or nano size products, very demand. So that these products can provide a better functionality in a given space. Other demand is high strength to weight ratio parts. That means people want the parts or components which should have light in weight and it can possess high strength. That is also demand. Then other one is high quality products with less cost, increased productivity, and more reduction in wastage of material. So these demands were putting a lot of pressure on the capabilities of the conventional manufacturing techniques, whatever I have described you in the previous slide. Okay, so we need some efficient manufacturing techniques to meet these demands. So what happened? The industrial researchers have made a continuous effort to advance the manufacturing techniques. Then eventually, these advanced manufacturing techniques, okay, have emerged as the efficient manufacturing techniques to meet the shortcomings of the conventional manufacturing techniques, and thus these advanced manufacturing techniques can meet these above demands. Okay, so what are those advanced manufacturing techniques are available till date? I will show you in the next slide. So this is a broad classification of advanced manufacturing techniques. So these advanced manufacturing techniques are broadly classified into various groups. Here I have shown here 6 groups. Another group also there, I will tell you. One is newer casting. Under this, lot of casting processes are there. Other one is advanced forming and powder metallurgy techniques. Under this also lot of techniques. I don't want to spell one by one. These are available in various literatures and books. Then under the microelectronic device fabrication techniques, under this lot of techniques are there. Another one is nano composites manufacturing techniques. Okay, lot of techniques are available. The another one is additive manufacturing. That is specific nowadays. The metal additive based manufacturing, or we can say metal 3D printing, is a booming area. Under this, that DMLS is there, electron beam melting, direct energy deposition, binder jetting, metal fused filament fabrication, then atomic diffusion additive manufacturing. These techniques are available. In
Excuse
addition to
me, sir.
that,
Sir,
sorry.
slides are not means not changing, sir.
Yeah. That means it will change.
Only
Only I am explaining
okay,
here. This
okay,
is the
sir.
overall I am explaining. It will change. I will change it, madam.
Okay, sir.
Madam, I will change it. That means only thing I am explaining in overall.
It's okay, sir. I thought
Yeah.
it is finished there.
No, madam. Actually, this I am explaining here. Then another one technique also there. It is not displaying here. One is advanced joining processes. This advanced joining processes under that process or under that techniques. One is microwave joining technique, then friction stir joining technique, then explosive joining technique. These lot of joining techniques are there. Then the last one is advanced machining techniques. So in this lecture, I would like to focus on this technique, advanced machining techniques, among these advanced manufacturing techniques. So what are those advanced machining techniques? You see, when you want to shape an exotic material, okay, or we can say like extraordinary material like superalloys, ceramics, carbides. If you want to precisely shape those alloys, ceramics, carbides, and if you want to precisely machine it so that you can obtain a desired shape and size, as well as that means you have to produce the product from those materials at a high quality with less cost. What is happening? The conventional machining techniques was quite difficult. Are you getting my point? So conventional machining techniques, I told you in the previous slides, under the conventional manufacturing technique, like turning, drilling, boring, all those things. Those techniques were very quite difficult to precisely shape or to precisely machine the superalloys, and you can produce the products from those superalloys at a high rate and at high quality and better cost. So what happened? These advanced machining techniques have developed as the efficient and economic alternatives to the conventional ones. Okay, so the advanced machining techniques are those techniques which are used to remove the material from a workpiece. That workpiece, it may be a conducting type or non-conducting type. Okay, so we have to remove the material from the workpiece. Okay, that using either mechanical energy source or thermal energy source or chemical and electrochemical energy source. By using either of the energy sources, we can remove the material from that workpiece. So whilst removing the material, we can create the features at macro level or meso level. So the features which are you are creating, how you are creating, you are removing the material in the form of debris. Those debris are removed at macro or meso level. Okay. So what are those? See, under this mechanical energy base, the advanced machining techniques include USM, ultrasonic machining, abrasive jet machining, water jet machining, abrasive water jet. These techniques are well known level, where the principle of material removal is mechanical erosion. Under the thermal energy source base, the techniques include CDM, corona discharge machining, electron beam machining, laser beam machining, ion beam machining, plasma arc machining. Under the chemical and electrochemical machining, that means energy source based, the process in the techniques include chemical machining, ECM, electrochemical machining. Here, in these techniques, the principle of material removal is melting and evaporation. And here, in these techniques, the principle of material removal is etching or anodic dissolution. Okay. So the important features of these advanced machining techniques include there is no physical contact, that indicates no contact stresses usually. Hardness and fragileness has no barrier for machining. They can be able to produce three-dimensional complex features or complex structures. They are difficult materials which are able to machine. The machines which are very difficult to machine or remove the material, you can so that you can create some shape and size. These advanced machining processes are able to machine those materials, and it can meet the surface quality requirement. Okay, so it has been known that these advanced machining processes, okay, are used in various industrial domains, such as machining of what we can say machining of complex blind shape cavities. They are also used in to make deep holes. They are also used for to machine extremely complicated shapes on various engineering materials to high accuracy and finish. As such, it has found widespread applications such as for making small and burr-free drilling holes in turbine blades. They are used for making die and mold manufacturing. They are used to make the spool valves, keyways for cylinders, etc. Lot of applications are there under that means using these advanced machining techniques. However, in today's high technology global market, with growing trends towards specific demands like miniaturization of parts. Suppose if you want to produce some parts, for example, MEMS, if you want to develop some MEMS, it is micro electromechanical systems. That means those MEMS are at their miniaturized level, at micro level, or we can also able to produce the NEMS, or we can call it the nano electromechanical systems. Those are the miniaturized parts. So these parts, if you want to produce, so what will happen? That will give various benefits. One is we can save the material, we can save the power, we can make the system light and compact. Okay, then it can increase the overall system efficiency. Then ease of transportation will be there. That's why the main important demand is the miniaturization of parts. For example, development of MEMS, NEMS, etc., which can be used in various potential applications like in electronic, in automobiles, okay, in biomedical, etc. Similarly, nano-level surface finish, one of the best demand. That means we have to make a component which looks like a mirror-like surface finish. Okay, that is also one demand. Then requirement for micro features or sub-micron features or nano features on various engineering materials, so that that can be used in particular application nowadays. Okay, so to meet these demands, what happened? This advanced machining technique has scaled down into a micro level, so-called we can call it as an advanced micro machining techniques. And those advanced micro machining techniques have become increasingly important, and they are able to reach these demands. Okay, they are able to reach these demands. So these advanced micro machining techniques are nothing but they are also similar to the advanced machining techniques. Only here what happens, I am adding here one M in each of the technique, nothing but you can call it the ultrasonic micro machining, like abrasive jet micro, like micro machinings. Okay, so these advanced micro machining techniques are those techniques which can be used to remove the material from the workpiece, okay, in the form of debris. So those debris can be removed at micro or nano level. Are you getting my point? So once we are creating once we are removing the material from the workpiece, using these precisely, that means controlled energy sources, what is happening? We are creating some micro features, or micro products, or microstructures. We are creating some microstructures, some nanostructures, so that the parts becomes miniaturized. Okay, and these advanced micromachining techniques, okay, that means involves very low input energy. You get my point? Involves very low input energy in the form of microjoule. Therefore, it can produce low unit removal of material. That means the low volume of material can be removed by using these advanced micromachining techniques because of the low input energy involved. They are able to produce intricate micro features. They involve some micron size tube, which should be less than 1 mm in diameter. They involve low range of input parameters. Difficult to difficult materials can be removed so that it can create some micro features from those materials, and it can meet the surface quality at nano level. Okay. So these are the salient features of these advanced micromachining techniques. So you know that advanced micromachining techniques are used in various promising applications. These advanced micromachining techniques are used in various promising applications. For example, machining of micro holes in turbine blades, micro holes in fuel injection automotive nozzles. Then they are used for machining micro filters, which are used in textile industry, food processing industry. They are used for machining of micro channels, which are used in nuclear reactors. Then NEMS, they are also used to produce the micro channels on, that means in microfluidics purpose and also nanofluidics purpose, and various applications also they are used. Okay. So what happened among these advanced manufacturing techniques? Okay, among these advanced manufacturing techniques, this corona discharge micromachining technique is one of the important technique. I would like to focus on this CDMM technique, okay, which is recently explored for the production of a novel material. How? You see, when in this advanced micromachining techniques, when we are creating some micro features or sub-micron features, the material which you are removing, those materials are nothing but that means which can say, that means in the form of debris. Those debris are removing at a certain micro or nano level. But attention has not been paid on those debris. Are you getting my point? People are working till to date, but the attention has not been paid on those debris. Okay, and those debris, what we are treating, that means we are treating as an unwanted material. Okay, so we are disposing of to the environment. We are not taking care of those debris. So it becomes a challenge for the researchers to concentrate on those debris, to collect those debris, to test those debris, and to reveal the structure of the debris and its possible application as a novel nanoparticle in the field of nanotechnology. That's why in this lecture, I would like to focus among these techniques only the CDMM, which recently explored for the production of nanoparticles, which is a novel material. So in the next slide, we'll go to this here. The advent of the concept of nanotechnology in corona discharge advanced manufacturing technique. So prior to the discussion on the exploration of this corona discharge micromachining technique, which is one of the advanced manufacturing technique, I would like to give a brief introduction to nanotechnology first of all, followed by the concept of nanoparticles and its applications. Then that means the conceptual then what are the various techniques available to produce nanoparticles. Okay, then we will go to the experimentation part, how we produce the nanoparticles. So introduction to nanotechnology, just only this 1 or 2 slides is very simple here. This nanotechnology is nothing but the technology which deals with the materials or structures at nano level. These materials or structures which are at nano level, they will provide more functionality in a given space. Okay, so the research on nanotechnology is expanding and evolving very rapidly in the current scenario. Okay, so different people have different opinion about this nanotechnology. What is exactly the nanotechnology? People are wondering. Some people says the study of the microstructure of a material using a microscope is known as nanotechnology. In some other country, people says the growth of thin films is also known as nanotechnology. Okay, so in USA, people are telling the materials and systems whose structures and components are in nano size, they are also considered as nanotechnology. But in general, this nanotechnology is nothing but it can be defined as the production and applications of nanostructured materials or nanomaterials. Okay, and these nanostructured materials or nanomaterials are those materials which are having at least one dimension in nanometer scale. That means it should be at least one of the dimensions should be less than 100 nanometer. And those nanomaterials include nanoparticles, nanorods, nanowires, thin films, nanocomposites, etc. Okay, so among these nanomaterials, okay, the field of nanoparticle technology have drawn a lot of attention among the researchers because of their promising applications. Okay, and they are evolving. That means and what happened? They're that means evolving very rapidly. Okay. And what are those nanoparticles? Nanoparticles are nothing but they are the microscopic particles whose size typically lies in the range of 1 to 100 nanometer. And these nanoparticles play a significant role in industrial and medical fields due to their enhanced size dependent characteristics.
ରଜିଲ ସାର୍
हाँ सर
ସାର୍ ସ୍ଲାଇଡ୍ ଟା ଚେଞ୍ଜ ହଉନି ସାର୍ ବୋଧେ
ଏବେ କୋଉଠି ସାର୍ ଏବେ ଇଣ୍ଟ୍ରୋଡକ୍ସନ ଟୁ ନାନୋ ଟେକ୍ନୋଲୋଜି ଅଛି ନା
ସାର୍ ଆପଣ ସେଇ ଫାଷ୍ଟ ସ୍ଲାଇଡ୍ ଟା ହିଁ ଅଛି
ବଟ୍ ସାର୍ ମୁଁ ତ ସାଇଡ୍ ଚେଞ୍ଜ କରି ଚାଲିଛି
ସାର୍ ଆପଣ ଯୋଉ ସ୍ଲାଇଡ୍ ଶୋ ର ଯୋଉ ପୂର୍ବଟା ସେଇଟା ସାର୍ ଅନ୍ କରନ୍ତୁ
ନାଇଁ ସାର୍ ମୁଁ ତ ଅନ୍ କରିଦେଲି ନା
चेंज ହେଲା sir ଏବେ ଚେଞ୍ଜ ହେଲା
ହଁ ସାର୍ ଏବେ ଚେଞ୍ଜ ହେଲା ସାର୍ ଏବେ ଚେଞ୍ଜ ହେଲା
ହଁ ମୁଁ ତ ସାର୍ ଏବେ 12th ନମ୍ବର ସ୍ଲାଇଡରେ ପଢି ଚାଲିଛି
ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା ଆଜ୍ଞା
ହଁ ଏବେ ଏବେ ଦେଖା ଯାଉଛି
ଆଜ୍ଞା
ହଁ sir ଏବେ ଦେଖା ଯାଉଛି
ସାର୍
Okay.
ସ୍ଲାଇଡ୍ ସ୍ଲୋ ଟା ଖାଲି ଅନ୍ କରିଦିଅନ୍ତୁ
ହଁ ହଁ ଏବେ ସାର୍ ଦୁସୁଛି ନା now it is visible
ସାର୍ yes it is visible but sir you
okay,
put
no
the
problem. Now I can
Slide
make
show
like
button.
that only, right?
sir make it full screen sir
Okay. Now it is visible.
yes sir
Now introduction to nanotechnology, the slide. Correct, na?
yes sir
yes yes
Yeah, yeah. Actually, now I am in this slide only. Okay, shall I start? Continue?
yes sir
Yes. So the audience, I think so. They have saw the previous slides or not? They understood, no? No problem. Now, shall I continue from this slide onwards? Santosh sir, shall I continue?
yes sir you continue sir
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
These nanoparticles play a significant role in industrial and medical fields due to their enhanced size dependent characteristics. See, what is this meaning of this sentence is when a bulk material is scaling down into a micro material and that micro material when scaling down into nanomaterial, okay, so the size of those materials will become extraordinary. So when the size of the material is decreasing, then what is happening? Their properties will behave very extraordinary. That is the meaning. So this means why their properties becomes extraordinary means their uniqueness arises because of their large surface area to volume ratio, which indicates a large fraction of atoms present on the particle surface. Okay, so this main feature calls for understanding the number of atoms present on the particle's surface. So according to Hosokawa et al., this table can understand. You see here, when the size of the particle is 20,000 nanometer, that means 20 micron, okay, the number of atoms present on the surface is 60 billion. Over this whole volume is 1000 trillion. So the percentage of atoms present on the particle surface over its whole volume is 0.006. But when you are scaling down this particle into 2 nanometer, you see here, the percentage of atoms present on the surface over its whole volume is almost 50%. That's why when the number of atoms on the particle surface is more, what will happen? They will have a high energy state of distribution as compared to the atoms inside the interior or inside the particles. So, due to the difference in energy of the atoms on the particle surface over its whole volume, what is happening? That energy is nothing but we can say surface free energy. That surface free energy is nothing but it is the excess energy present on the particle surface, okay, as compared to its whole volume. So that makes the nanoparticle, okay, to behave in a very extraordinary way. That is the main physics behind it. Okay. So I will go to the next slide. Madam, now the next slide is visible to all of you.
No, sir. It is not
Next
visible.
slide not visible.
No, sir.
Yeah, that's the problem now. I have to make the end so down. Okay, now it is now I can make like that only, correct now?
Yes, sir. Now it is
Oh.
visible.
Yes. Then this material in general, the materials such as metals, non-metals, semiconductors, glasses, or ceramics can be scaled down into nanoparticles. Okay, and the spectrum of these nanoparticles ranges from inorganic to organic nanoparticles. That means inorganic we can say like metallic nanoparticles, organic we can say like carbon, fullerenes, etc. Crystalline form to amorphous form nanoparticles. It is the nanoparticles are in the form of aggregates. That means like in agglomerated form. They can be in the form of the powders in a matrix that we can say like when you take a molten metal and you can disperse some powders in that molten metal. That molten metal is a matrix. Then when you are dispersing some powders, those powders in the form of nanoparticle, we can call it the powders are dispersed in a matrix. Suspension in the sense some particles we are dispersing in a liquid, only in a liquid that becomes a colloid or suspension, or we can call it a fluid, nanofluid, and fullerenes. Okay, so these nanoparticles are classified based on their dimension. You see, the nanoparticles are usually coming under the category of zero-dimensional nanomaterial, according to Datta. So these zero-dimensional nanomaterials are nothing but whose all the dimensions are in nanometer range. Okay, for example, nanoparticles, they are the zero-dimensional nanomaterial where all the dimensions are in nanometer scale, that is less than 100 nanometer. Those nanoparticles can be quantum dots, can be spherical type, can be cubical type, it can be a helical type, it can be a pillar-like type, it can be a polyhedral type, etc. Okay, so these are the nanoparticles. Under the one-dimensional nanomaterial, okay, that means one-dimensional means whose one dimension is outside the nanometer range and the other two dimensions are inside the nanometer range. So for example, nanotubes, nanorods, nanowires, nanofibers, etc. Two-dimensional nanomaterial means whose two dimensions are in the outside the nanometer range. Only one dimension inside the nanometer range. That means less than 100 nanometer. Graphene, nanophenines, nanolayers, nanocortex, etc. Then these nanoparticles are classified based on the phase structure. Single phase solid nanoparticle, that means crystalline or amorphous, and layers. Under the multi-phase solid nanoparticle, okay, we can call it as a core cell particle example. Core cell means, for example, if you take a copper particle as a core, surrounding that one cell will form a silver. So silver, copper, that means copper is the core, silver is the cell, that we can say the core cell nanoparticle. Functionalized nanoparticle. Functionalized nanoparticle, for example, when you take a copper particle, nanoparticle, surrounding that one, we can cap with a polymeric cell or polymeric acid. So that polymer will form a cell. Inside the core will be copper particle. That becomes a functionalized. Then multi-phase system nanoparticle like colloids. Colloids, I told you, they are the suspensions. That means dispersion of solid particles in a liquid medium. Aerosols, that means dispersion of gaseous particles in a liquid medium. Aerosols, that means dispersion of solid particles in air, etc. So these are the classifications of nanoparticles based on dimension, phase structure. And also the nanoparticles are classified based on the nature of bonding between the atoms, according to Johnston and Wilcoxon. So one is covalently bonded nanoparticles, for example, semiconductor nanoparticles. Van der Waals bonded nanoparticles, for example, molecular nanoparticles. The molecular nanoparticles include fullerenes, these fullerenes, okay, that we can say the cage-like carbon atoms, okay, then polyoxometallites, then polyoligomeric globular proteins. These are the molecular nanoparticles. Then ionic bonded nanoparticles, example, ionic nanoparticles. Ionic nanoparticles includes sodium chloride nanoparticles, magnesium oxide, etc. Metallically bonded nanoparticles, which includes metallic, any kind of metallic nanoparticle, and also metallic nanoalloys. Metallic, that means you can say nanometallic alloys. Then the last one is coordinate bonded nanoparticle. This coordinate bonded nanoparticle, nothing but these are the example of the examples passivated metal nanoparticles. Passivated means when a core solid nanoparticle will be there, for example, metal nanoparticle will be there, to handle that bare metal nanoparticle, the core nanoparticle, okay, and also to achieve the approximate uniformity in that size of the metal nanoparticle, what we are doing, we are protecting that nanoparticle by a polymeric agent. Okay, so that polymeric agent will be passive. That means it will be protect this metallic nanoparticle. So that type of bonding is nothing but we can call it as a coordinate bonding. Okay, so these are the classification of nanoparticles. Then this slide, right? The next slide is, you see these nanoparticles, because of their high surface area to volume ratio, okay, or we can say because of their high surface free energy, okay, so those nanoparticles can exhibit novel physical properties, novel mechanical, thermal, catalytic, antibacterial, optical properties, etc. So because of their extraordinary properties, these properties, they are widely used in various potential applications. So indicatively, such applications include, they are used in automobiles, in automobile radiators. The nanoparticles are used in automobile radiators to cool the engines. You see, in the previous days, people used especially water or some ethylene glycol, etc., to cool the engine. They are passed through a radiator and cool the engine. But when these nanoparticles are emerged and they are used in the radiator, what is happening? They will cool the engine at a very faster rate. They will make the radiator light and compact. So as a result, what will happen? It will reduce the drag force when the vehicle is moving. Okay, when the radiator becomes smaller and light, or we can say lighter, what is happening? The drag force will be reduced. So finally, the fuel consumption efficiency will be improved. Okay, that is very important here. The nanoparticles are passed through the tiny passages of the MEMS devices, to cool these MEMS devices. They are used in heat exchangers and evaporators for high heat transfer rate. They are used in as a catalysis. They are used in lithium-ion batteries, okay, as a catalyst, so that it can improve the charging and discharging rate. Okay, that is very important, and also it can have a high energy storage capacity. These are used in rocket propellants. Okay, so you see now recently ISRO people, they are wondering about these aluminum nanoparticles. Okay, so previously they are using aluminum microparticles with ammonium chloride and with a binder, so that can be used as a propellant. So nowadays we are replacing the aluminum microparticles by the aluminum nanoparticles. So those aluminum nanoparticles, when they are added with the ammonium chloride and binder, so that becomes a solid rocket propellant. So that can be used to increase the burning rate of the propellant. Okay, so when the burning rate will be increased, so what is happening? So there will be a faster energy release, so that the rocket will propel faster. That's why they are used in rocket propellants. The nanoparticles are used in explosives to increase the detonation capacity of the explosives in DRDO. They are used in biomedical applications. For example, they are used in drug delivery systems to kill the cancer cells nowadays. They are also used to protect the food from bacteria. Okay, that food protection of bacteria, etc. So, owing to the various potential applications of these nanoparticles, what happened? The production of these nanoparticles and their characterization has become a great interest for the researchers. So, what are the various techniques available to produce those nanoparticles? I will show you in the next slide. Okay, so the novel nanoparticles production techniques. You see, the nanoparticles are usually produced by two approaches. One is top-down approach, other one is bottom-up approach. So under the top-down approach, what is happening? The nanoparticles will be produced by mechanical crushing of the bulk material. You take a bulk metallic piece and you can grind it or you can mechanically crush it. So after crushing or grinding, what is happening? They will be converted into nanocrystallites. So you will take a bulk material, then crush it so that it comes into nanoparticles ranges. Under the bottom-up approach, the nanoparticles are produced from the atomic or molecular level, atom by atom or molecule by molecule. That means you can remove. Okay, then it forms a supramolecular structure. Supramolecular means by combining various molecules becomes a large structure. Okay, then by atom or by molecule or molecules will cluster, they form supramolecule, finally they forms a nanoparticle sizes. Okay, so these are the various two approaches to produce the nanoparticle. Okay, so under this top-down approach, the mechanical methods include ball milling, lithography. Under the bottom-up approach, the liquid phase reaction methods include chemical reduction, solution precipitation, sol-gel processing, microemulsion, polyol, boiling flask 3-neck, microfluidic reactor. Under the vapor phase reaction technique, that means reaction methods, wire explosion, pulse laser ablation, inert gas condensation, sputtering, combustion flame, aerosol synthesis, spray pyrolysis, solvated metal atom dispersion. So that means you can we observe here a wide variety of techniques have been developed till date by the researchers to produce the nanoparticles of definite shape and size that can use various potential applications. However, production of the nanoparticles using a corona discharge micromachining technique, are you getting my point? Okay, so it has not been construed as a prior art. Therefore, in this lecture, I would like to explore this corona discharge micromachining technique, how it is used to produce the nanoparticle, and that can use a particular application. Okay, so these are the various that means methods are there. I don't want to explain, it's readily available in various literatures. If you want, I will send you the slide also. So then I will go to the exploration of the corona discharge micromachining for production of nanoparticles. See, my dear audience, so you have to know what is this corona discharge micromachining, the concept. A small one slide is there, it is one slide concept. This corona discharge micromachining is one of the advanced micromachining technique. That means, please remember, it is one of the advanced micromachining technique, or we call it as one of the advanced manufacturing technique, which is based on the corona energy created between the two electrodes, that is tool cathode and the workpiece anode, surrounded by dielectric fluid. Okay, so this technique is used for machining of micro features like micro holes and micro channels and various engineering materials, general purpose engineering materials and also exotic materials. So these micro features are obtained by removing a tiny bit of materials, that means a tiny bit of materials in the form of debris through melting and evaporation phenomena by using the corona discharge, the sudden discharge of electrons, okay, between the electrodes. Okay, so when you are removing the debris through melting and evaporation phenomena using this corona discharge process, what is happening? Some of the debris is evaporated and some are dispersed in the dielectric fluid. So it is quite interesting to note that the debris which are dispersed in the dielectric fluid are very small enough. So recently the exploration on these debris and their applications as nanoparticles in various promising fields has addressed. So I will show you how it is addressed here. This is the experimentation part. Okay. So this is the block diagram of the corona discharge micromachining experimental setup, which is indigenously developed by us. And this is the photographic view of the setup, which is, that means we have developed indigenously. And this one I will tell you here. this figure and these two figures, this figure and this figure. See, in this figure, it consists of a tool, a micro-sized tool of 0.5 diameter, which is connected to the negative terminal of DC power supply. It consists of a workpiece which is connected to the positive terminal of the DC power supply. So this tool becomes a cathode, workpiece becomes an anode. This tool and workpiece are separated by a small gap, and both these electrodes are dispersed in a are immersed in a dielectric fluid. In our case, we are taking the dielectric fluid as a deionized water, and that dielectric fluid is contained in an ultrasonicator. So this is an ultrasonicator, and this is the close-up view of the ultrasonicator. That means here tool, here workpiece, and ultrasonicator. This is a close-up view of the tool, workpiece, and ultrasonicator system. Okay, so this ultrasonicator, what is the purpose of incorporating here? It is used to provide ultrasonic vibration at a frequency of 55 kilohertz. Okay, to prevent the agglomeration of the debris which are produced in the dielectric fluid. Okay, and this ultrasonicator also helps in removing the debris from the spark gap efficiently. Okay, and it provides the stable spark discharges, and thus the machining efficiency can be improved. In this setup, there is a piezo actuator. This is a piezo actuator which is used to feed the tool and control the gap between the tool and the workpiece. So this piezo actuator consists of two piezo stacks. Here piezo stack 1, piezo stack 2. 1, 2. It consists of two piezo stacks arranged in series. Each piezo stack consists of 196 piezo wafers of 0.1 mm thickness and 25 mm square cross-sectional area. And these two piezo stacks are housed inside a flexural ring which is used to amplify the displacement of the actuator. So the upward and downward movement of the actuator is caused by the flexural ring, and the total motion of the actuator, the upward and downward movement, is plus or minus 200 micron. Okay, it is micrometer. Then in this setup, an oscilloscope is used to capture the pulse discharge waveform, that we can say voltage waveform during machining. And in this setup, a pulse generation and control unit, that we can say pulse generation and control circuit, we have developed in-house. It's attached here. And this unit is used to provide the pulses of specified frequency and duty cycle to the electrodes. This unit consists of a component, that is pulse width modulator, that is used to provide rectangular pulses of specified frequency in the range of 1 kilohertz to 5 kilohertz, and duty cycle 5% 50% to the electrodes. Okay, and the frequency and the duty cycle are monitored using the potentiometers, okay, which is connected to the pulse width modulator. Okay, so then here is the tool feed control circuit is there here. Okay, and this whole arrangement is the tool feed controlling part. I will explain you how it's working in the next slide. See, my dear audience, now when we are going to start the experiment, we have set the voltage of required in nature. Then we have set the DI, we have poured the DI water in an ultrasonicator of a specific volume. Then the tool is moved towards the workpiece and it reaches to a value equivalent to the set spark gap. Okay, so when when a spark gap was reached, due to high potential gradient across the electrodes, what is happening? The dielectric will break down, and thus a plasma channel will be formed. Okay, this plasma channel will enable the spark, that means the sudden discharge of electrons, okay, towards the workpiece. That we can call it as a corona discharge or spark discharge. Okay, so when the spark occurs, due to the spark, what is happening? A localized intense heat will be produced in the workpiece region, equal to its melting and evaporation temperature. So the workpiece starts to melt and evaporate, and thus small debris will be formed. They will be dispersed in the dielectric field. Okay, so this is the mechanism here. I shown here. The electrons will move from the cathode towards the anode, and the positive ions will move from anode towards the cathode. How? Here, when the set spark gap is reached here, The electrons from the tool will break loose and travel towards the anode. When they are traveling towards the anode in the dielectric fluid, they start to hit the neutral atoms or neutral molecules of the dielectric fluid that cause them ionization, and all of a sudden there will be sudden discharge of electrons from the cathode towards the anode. At the same time, the positive ion, that the holes will move towards the cathode from the anode. Okay, so in this way, the debris will be formed, leaving behind a small crater on the surface of the workpiece. Okay, so this is the close-up view how the debris are formed in our case. When there is a melting of the material, the metallic vapors molecules, what they will do? They will go to the low temperature. They will flow through the. They will go to the low temperature region in the dielectric fluid. They start to condense. When they start to condense, what is happening? They start to nucleate. Nucleate means one atom, atom by atom, they will acquire. They will come close together. So what is happening here? The nucleation starts. So when there is a nucleation starts, by acquiring the atoms, then the growth of the particle will take place in a specified orientation. Okay. So what is happening? The particle growth takes place. So at a high concentration of the particle, the growth of a particle can be controlled by either the coalescence rate or collision rate. If the rate of coalescence is less than the collision, then what is happening? You are getting a spherical size particles of defined singles. Okay. When the coalescence rate is greater than the collision rate, then you will get an agglomerated size particles. That means a bigger size particles we are obtaining. So this mechanism we have to tune by the various process parameters and also the surrounding environment. This is the main physics behind it in our case. Then we will go through, these are the experimental parameters. Now in this case, in this study I am showing only the copper nanoparticles. Why? Among the various metallic nanoparticles, these copper nanoparticles have played a significant research and market attention nowadays because of their less cost, extraordinary physical, thermal, then electrical, catalytic, antibacterial properties, and their widely used in various promising applications. So these are the experimental parameters we have chosen to conduct the experiment. We have taken the workpiece as a copper plate, and the copper wire is a tool material, and the various process parameters we set there. Then we have used a stabilizer at a concentration of 1 weight per volume percentage. Why you use stabilizer, I will tell you in the forthcoming slide. This is the oscilloscope which is used to capture the voltage waveform. And here what happened, when the debris are come out from the workpiece in the dispersing in the dielectric fluid, in our case the dielectric fluid we have taken DI water, that is deionized water. Okay, thus those debris which are dispersed in dielectric fluid, it becomes, we can call as a colloidal debris. We collected in a glass vial or glass tube. Then we went for certain characteristic study. So what we did, after collecting from the glass vials, the debris dispersed in the dielectric fluid. Okay, we have dribbled 3 or 4 drops on a carbon-coated copper grids. Then we allowed for drying for 2 hours. Whatever the precipitate remains on the grid, we have taken for the transmission electron microscopy study. So in that study, we will identify or ascertain the size, shape, and distribution of the particles. Then further, we went for certain application study also. So these are the various equipments used for characterizing in our case. This is for TEM with ADAX and SAD attached. This is a ultrasonic velocity measurement setup, I will tell you. This is a Brookhaven 90 plus nanoparticle size analyzer used to measure the secondary size particles. This is a Brookfield viscometer to measure the viscosity. It is the thermal conductivity to measure the thermal conductivity probe, Kd2 probe, to measure the thermal conductivity of a fluid. That means colloidal nanofluid, nanoparticles or the debris dispersed in a liquid. Then this is a ultraviolet visual spectrophotometer used to identify the nature of the samples after collection of the fluid 2 weeks after that. There are various equipments are used. Now I will show you the characterization studies in 2 or 3 slides. See, when the copper particle, the debris which are produced in the dielectric fluid, we have taken for the TEM study, we found that a very large size copper particles are produced in the range of 680 nanometer to up to 1050 nanometer. Okay, that large size copper particles are particularly caused due to the agglomeration of the particles. That means the particles are agglomerating, they are becoming a very large size defined singles. Okay, and this agglomeration occur due to the van der Waals forces of attraction, combination of the van der Waals forces of attraction and Brownian motion. Okay, which is occurred during condensation and nucleation of the copper metallic vapors. Okay, so these are the large size copper particles we found. You see, this is a particle of submicron size with dense structure at the periphery. But here there is no dense structure at the periphery. Why? Because here there is a agglomeration of particles wholly takes place over the whole surface. But here what happens on the surface, there is a clustering of primary copper particles. That's why there is no dense at the periphery. Okay. So for the EDEX study, this EDEX study what we made is used to identify the chemical composition of the sample. Sample means the copper particles, that means the copper debris which are dispersed in the dielectric fluid. This EDEX is nothing but energy dispersive analysis for X-rays. So this is used to identify the chemical composition. So in the TEM mode it is attached, and this figure shows that distinct elemental peaks of copper you see here. This indicates the presence of copper particle because of the transition of the electrons to the L and K cells in copper atoms. That's why the distinct elemental peaks are observed here. And also here 4 peaks are observed because the copper atoms contains high atomic density crystallographic facets. That's why here 4 characteristic peaks are observed. And moreover, here there is no oxides or other impurities are observed also. So it is verified that the copper particles which are dispersed in a dielectric fluid, that means the large size particles, are pure crystalline copper. And also the nature, or we can say the crystal structure of that particle also studied using this selected area electron diffraction pattern. So this SAED pattern, what happened? It shows some clear diffraction rings. You see here, one ring, other ring, okay? Some various rings you are showing here. The diameter from the center to the each ring is measured here. The first ring diameter yields a lattice spacing, that is D. D is nothing but lattice spacing or D spacing of 0.21 nanometer for this 111 plane. So this 0.21 nanometer perfectly matching with the FCC crystalline lattice copper distance in powder diffraction fine. We observed that one. Similarly, the lattice spacing for the next 2 rings for 200 plane and 220 plane also perfectly match with the FCC crystalline lattice distance of copper. So finally, it is observed that the copper particles which are obtained or produced in the dielectric fluid are of pure metallic copper. But here what happened, we are obtaining or producing the submicron or micron size particles rather than nano sizes. Our main motto is we have to produce the nano size particles. So those nano size particles, what happened here, we have adopted the ultrasonication method to prevent the agglomeration, but still the ultrasonication was not effective to prevent the agglomeration. Moreover, what is happening after 4 hours, when we collected the copper debris dispersed in a dielectric fluid, that fluid samples, there is a sedimentation of these particles taking place. So in the fluid, that means poor dispersion stability also obtained. In order to overcome problem, what happened? We have adopted one stabilizer, that is polyvinyl alcohol as a stabilizing agent as per the surface chemistry of copper particle and the DI water. According to the surface chemistry, we have adopted the PVA after conducting exclusive number of experiments. So this polyvinyl alcohol when added and conducted the experiment under same input conditions, whatever I shown in the previous slide. Okay, so you see here some bright spots are visible. Those bright spots nothing but they are the copper particles whose size lies in the range of 2 to 10 nanometer with a mean size of 7 nanometer. Okay, and from the EDEX and also SAD, it is also confirmed that the copper particles are dispersed in DI, water, and PBA. We can say PBA solution are a pure metallic copper, but some kind of small impurities, iron is present that cannot be excluded in our case. Okay, that one we have to look over. And what is happened by using this PBA? Certainly, we have reduced the size up to 2 to 10 nanometer, mean size 7 nanometer. But after 36 hours of the collection of the fluid samples, here what happened, the copper particles again sedimenting down, settling down. Why? Because this PBA contains a large concentration of hydroxyl ions. As a result, the PBA polymer does not adsorb extensively at the particle surface. That's why the segmentation is taking place. And this is the mechanism how, by using this polyvinyl alcohol, we have reduced the size of the particles to mean size 7 nanometer. You see here, we are using the stabilizer molecules, for example, PBA. And this, when the nanoparticles, when the copper particles 1, copper particle 2, when they are dispersed in the dielectric fluid, the stabilizer molecules which are dissolved previously in the DI water, they will be arranged, okay, themselves at the interface between the particle surface and the liquid because of their amphiphilic nature. Okay, so they are arranged in such a manner that their hydrocarbon chain, this is the hydrocarbon chain and this is the polar head group, the circle. The hydrocarbon chain will be comes in direct contact with the surface of the particle here, and the polar head group will be oriented towards the liquid phase due to the characteristic chemical affinity. In this way, they will form a thin stabilizer chain on the surface of the particle, which can reduce the interaction between the particles and thus inhibits the agglomeration. But after the 36 hour, what is happening? Due to the polyvinyl alcohol contains high concentration of hydroxyl ions, as I told you earlier, the settlement of copper particles takes place. So the dispersion stability is not obtained. But our main motto is we have to reduce the size of the particle, and excellent dispersion stability has to be obtained so that it can use various potential applications. So finally, what has happened? We have adopted another stabilizer agent, that is polyethylene glycol. By using this agent, we got a mean size of 6 nanometer, even though reduced to 1 nanometer mean, and excellent dispersion stability. After 3 months and 6 months also, we saw there is no settling of the copper particles. So finally, it has been proved that by using polyethylene glycol, okay, in DI water, we will get a copper particles of mean size 6 nanometer and excellent dispersion stability. This is about the copper particles, one of the illustration I have explained you. So by this, the size, shape and distribution has been observed here. Then one of the important characteristic, that means its concentration. So the concentration of the nanoparticles, for example, copper nanoparticles, which has been dispersed in the dielectric fluid, plays a very important role for their applications because copper nanoparticles exhibit extraordinary properties. But we know that it has been known that the nanoparticles which are dispersed in a liquid medium in general, the concentration of those nanoparticles have been measured by using various techniques till date. One technique is ultraviolet visible spectroscopy. Second is suspended solid meters. Third one is dynamic light scattering. Fourth one is what we can say electrospray differential mobility analyzer. Fifth one is mass spectrometry. So these are the techniques already available to measure the concentration of nanoparticles in a liquid medium. But those techniques are not suitable to measure a large volume of the nanoparticles, okay, in situ or inline. Thus, they are not capable or not suitable for industrial applications in the present scenario. So, in order to overcome that problem, okay, we have exploited a new approach, that is ultrasound velocity technique approach, so that it can measure a large volume of concentration of nanoparticles in a fluid, okay, in situ, inline during processing time. So how we are measuring, I will tell you, okay, in this slide. Santosh sir, shall we have 1 minute break? Santosh sir?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
1 minute break. Okay, shall we continue now?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
The concentration measurement here. See, my dear audience, this is the ultrasonic velocity measurement setup. It is the block diagram, and this is the photographic view of the setup. Okay, so this setup consists of an ultrasonic probe of frequency 10 megahertz, which is connected to a probe holder. Here, one probe holder will be there, and this is connected to a ultrasonic pulsar receiver unit with a DAC system with a computer, and one motion controller unit will be there used to feed the probe into the beaker which contains the nanofluids. That nanofluids means the copper nanoparticles dispersed in a dielectric fluid or base fluid, that is DI water. Okay, so here what happened, my dear audience? You see here, first of all, the ultrasonic probe from the surface level of the nanofluid is displaced to a reference position 1 here. Okay, so when this ultrasonic probe was displaced to reference position 1, that probe will be excited by the timed pulses from the ultrasonic pulsar receiver unit. So once it is excited, what is happening? A pulse of sound will be created. So that sound pulse will travels towards the beaker and is reflected back from the bottom surface of the beaker. So when it's reflecting back, what is happening? The returning pulse will be detected, and that pulse nothing but the acoustic time of flight. The resultant time of flight, that is the acoustic time of flight, is recorded using this DAC system, okay, with the help of a computer. So that resultant time of flight, that acoustic time of flight is recorded at position 1, that becomes T1, time of flight at position 1. Similarly, the probe is displaced consistently to position 2, position 3, position 4, position 5 by 5 mm, and at the same time we have recorded the acoustic time of flight at different positions of the probe. Okay, so here this figure shows the maximum, the variation of the time of flight at different positions of probe. You see here the maximum difference between the successive positions, maximum difference of the time of flight between the successive positions. That means 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, like that 1. Okay, that means 1 to 2, 2 to 3, like that. The maximum difference of the time of flight between the successive positions of probe is found to be less than 1% for each sample. We took initially DI water, then PBA solution, then PEG solution. Then simultaneously we took the copper particles dispersed in DI water, then in PBA solution, in PEG solution. We took all these samples and we found the maximum difference of the acoustic time of flight between the successive positions of probe is less than 1%. So now what we did, after recording the time of flight at various positions, we have calculated the average time of flight. That is Ts equal to this one. So after calculating the average time of flight, then we have determined the ultrasonic velocity Vs, that is equal to 2h by Ts. H is nothing but the length of the fluid column between the successive positions of probe, that is 5m. Okay, so after calculating or determining this ultrasonic velocity based on this H and Ts, okay, then this ultrasonic velocity for a multi-component system is equal to root over of 1 by k mean into rho mean according to Urich and Amen. This k mean is nothing but the mean adiabatic compressibility, and this rho mean is the mean density. This k mean equal to the summation of phi j kj, rho mean equal to phi j rho. This phi j is nothing but it is the volume fraction of the jth component in the suspension. It is the adiabatic compressibility of the jth component suspension. For example, if two components are there, one is a base fluid DI water, other one is a solid particle, that is copper particle. So the copper particle is one component and the base fluid DI water is another two component system is there. So here the K mean will be phi 1 into K1 plus phi 2 into K2. This phi 1 is nothing but the volume fraction of the component number 1, that is particle, and similarly K1 also, that means volume fraction of the component number 1, that is particle, the adiabatic compressibility of the component number 1, that is the particle, Then phi 2 is the volume fraction of the component 2, that is di water. Similarly, adiabatic compressibility of the component 2, that is di water. Similarly, the rho mean also same thing here. By putting the value of K mean and rho mean in this equation, we have calculated the phi 1 here, the volume fraction of the copper particle. When you calculate the volume fraction of the copper particle by using this K mean and rho mean in Vs, then finally we calculate the mass fraction W, that is equal to phi 1 into rho 1 whole divided by phi 1 rho 1 plus 1 minus phi 1 rho 2. This phi 1 rho 1 already, rho 1 means density of the copper particle, rho 2 means density of the base 2, that is di1. According to Pauve, we have adopted this equation and calculate the mass fraction in terms of percentage. That mass fraction is nothing but the concentration of the particles. So this is a new approach we have adopted while machining the workpieces in situ. Then we measure the concentration. A large volume of fluid also you can measure by this technique. That means now it is known to the society, and also regarding this we have published one paper, okay, in the impact factor of 5.03. So these are the average time of flight we have determined by using the previous equations, and ultrasonic velocity we have calculated. Then the mass fraction we have determined. Okay. So for the copper particles which are dispersed in di water, the mean size we got 880. In previous solution, 7 nanometer, 6 nanometer, which is shown in the previous slide. The mass fraction we got here like that. You see here, the mass fraction is slightly different among each other. Why? Because when we are machining the workpiece, we are lacking the identification of the micro holes whenever we are making on the surface of the workpiece. The lack of identification of the machining time. Even though we are keeping all the parameters constant, but what is happening? The lack of identification of time is there. That's why the mass fraction is varying here. Okay, and this is the one figure which shows the variation of the time of flight with concentration of copper nanofluids. How the time of flight varies? You see, this one represents the time of flight for copper particles dispersed in di water. Similar 2 and 3 for copper particles in PBA and PEG solution. Okay. You see here the each time of flight, okay, is plotted with an error bar, okay, which shows the standard deviation of data from the mean value, okay, when the probe is displacing consistently in the beaker. Okay, so here the aquatic time of flight for copper particles dispersed in di water is found to be more as compared to the PBA and PEG solution. Okay. Hence, what is happening? The ultrasonic velocity will be decreases. You see, ultrasonic velocity is decreasing as compared to this PBA and PEG solution. So, why the aquatic time of flight is more? That means the ultrasonic velocity decreases because in copper di water there is an agglomeration. That means the particle-particle interaction taking place. We have no stabilizing agents. So, when there is a particle-particle interaction taking place, they starts to agglomerate. Okay, once they starts to agglomerate, they will increase the mean density and compressibility. So as a result, what is happening is ultrasonic velocity will be decreases as compared to PBA and PEG solution. So this is about the variation. Then we'll switch over to the thermal conductivity we have measured, okay, of these nanofluids, and the thermal conductivity measured using a KD2 Pro device. Then after measuring thermal conductivity, we found that the thermal conductivity of the copper particles which are dispersed in di water and PB and PEG solution is found to be increased as compared to the di water, that base fluid. Okay, why it is increasing? Because due to the presence of the copper particles in the di water, and also the other factors responsible for the improvement of the thermal conductivity, which includes the Brownian motion of nanoparticles, then liquid layering at the liquid particle interface, and strong movement of energy carriers in the fluid. That is very, very important here. That's why the thermal conductivity of the copper particles in this case is increasing as compared to di water. And we have adopted a Maxwell predictive theory and compared with the experimental value. So after comparing what is happening, we are not getting a close agreement with this experimental value. So the Maxwell prediction is not much enough for our case. So we tried for this one, though we are getting the spherical size particles. And in Maxwell prediction theory, what is happening? We are neglecting some points which are not useful for this equation, which are not adaptable for this equation. Okay. Similarly, the viscosity of nanofluids we have measured using a Brookfield viscometer. So it has found that the viscosity of these fluids has been increased as compared to DI water because of the presence of the copper particles, which have a large potential enhancement in the viscosity that plays a very important role in the application of nanofluids. And this figure shows the variation of viscosity versus shear rate. Dynamically, we have plotted here. You see the viscosity of each sample, only DI water and the copper particles dispersed in DI water, PB and PEG. First of all, from 0 to 25 second inverse, the viscosity of each sample increases because the instrument has to take some time to stabilize. Then from 25 second inverse to up to 50 second inverse, again it reduced sharply. That means suddenly it decreased. Because here what is happening, the shear thinning behavior of the samples takes place. Then after beyond this one, up to 150 second inverse shear rate, okay, then the viscosity does not vary appreciably, which indicates the Newtonian behavior of the fluids. But from this graph, it is found that the viscosity of the copper nanoparticles dispersed in various fluids is found to be more as compared to the only DI water. Okay, from this case. So based on that one, we have developed a application setup for heat transfer purpose. We developed in-house, and we pass the DI water and also the copper particles dispersed in DI water PEG. And what happened in this, I'll show you. This is one vessel we have made, okay, cylindrical steel vessel, which contains the fluid. One heat exchanger we have fabricated. This is a brass valve, okay, and it is a fluid container. That means we can collect the fluid after beaker, which collects the fluid after passing the heat exchanger. It is a solid state relay with a temperature controller. This is the photographic view. So what happened initially, we took the DI water here and we increased the temperature up to 40 degrees Celsius. Then we allowed the valve, then it passes to the heat exchanger, and the temperature at various locations are recorded using the thermocouple, which is attached to the data logger interface with the computer. Okay, then again we took the copper particles dispersed in this PEG solution and heated to up to 40 degrees Celsius. Then we saw here, you see the temperature at various locations is drastically reduced as compared to the DI water. So this copper nanofluids, which is dispersed in PEG solution, can be act as a high heat transfer fluid as compared to only DI water, so that it can be used in automobile applications in radiator. And based on this one, we have published one book related to the corona discharge micromachining, and this book is published in the CRC Press, Taylor and Francis. Okay, and now it is available in world's top 10 university library. For example, Oxford, Cambridge, then Massachusetts, then Stanford, Harvard. In addition to that, a lot of university libraries available this book. You can also access this book in various university libraries. So this is about the production and characterization of nanoparticles. Now the last slides are there. The spotlight on artificial smart system for optimal nanoparticles characterization. So we have characterized the size, concentration, thermal conductivity, viscosity, all those things, right? So what we did, we have designed an experimental layout, that is L9 experimental layout, okay, and we have took 4 input parameters: voltage, pulse on time, pulse off time, and feed rate. Then after that, this parameters has been designed as per the experimental layout, okay. Then what happened after that one, we conducted the experiment, then we produced the nanoparticles for each experiment. Repetitive experiments we have conducted. After conducting all these experiments, what happened? The responses we have measured are mean size we have measured, mass fraction, concentration we have measured, thermal conductivity. Okay. So these 3 responses we have taken. First of all, to study the optimization. Okay. So you see, in order to optimize these 3 responses, people are adopting the Taguchi technique so that it can optimize single response or responses individually. But if you want to optimize all the responses at a single level setting by combining all those things, this Taguchi technique almost fails. Okay, because there is a lot of confounding factors arises. So in order to overcome this problem, what is happening? Okay, so we have adopted a fuzzy logic system, which is nothing but an artificial smart system. Okay, so in our case, this fuzzy logic system will combine the mean size, the concentration, and thermal conductivity at a single level vector setting. Our main aim is to minimize the mean size and to maximize the concentration and thermal conductivity at the single vector level setting. So we adopted the fuzzy logic system. This fuzzy, I think so people knows fuzzy is nothing but this is the fuzzy related to the things which are not clear, or you can say vague. This fuzzy logic system is nothing but it is an artificial smart system that resembles the human decision making methodology. Okay, and this fuzzy logic it can be used to solve the simplex real world problems based on the degree of truth. Okay, so the structure in our case, the structure of three input, that means we took the mean size, concentration, and thermal conductivity as three input parameters. We give an input to the fuzzy logic system, and the output we have studied as a multi-response performance index. Okay, so this fuzzy logic system, this is the structure. Okay, three inputs, x1, x2, x3. We have given input to the fuzzy logic system. Okay, and the output we are studying as a multi-response performance index, and this output has to be maximized. Okay, so this fuzzy logic system consists of a fuzzifier, fuzzy rule base, membership function. We can call both them as a knowledge base, an inference engine, otherwise defuzzifier. Okay, so this fuzzifier, what it will do? It will convert the crisp input. That means these are the crisp, that means real input data. It will convert into a fuzzy value or a fuzzy quantity or a linguistic value. Linguistic value or linguistic variables are those variables whose values are fuzzy numbers. It is not crispy. Okay, so this fuzzifier will convert the crisp inputs into a fuzzy value or a fuzzy quantity or a linguistic variable or linguistic value. Okay, then here the fuzzy rule base and membership function, that is knowledge base. The knowledge base contains a rule base, fuzzy rule base, and a database. This fuzzy rule base contains if and then fuzzy rules, and the database that means represents the membership functions, okay, which are in the form of the graphical format that can represent the degree of the truth in the fuzzy logic. Okay, and here this inference engine is there. It is the decision making unit. It is a key unit of the fuzzy logic system. So it performs operations based on the fuzzy if then rules, okay, along with the connectors OR and AND. Okay, and finally the defuzzifier, it will convert the fuzzy quantity or the fuzzy values into a finally crisp input. Okay, why? Because a real world system always require the output of the fuzzy logic system to the crisp. Finally, this defuzzifier will convert the fuzzy value into a crisp value, that is y0, which is multi-response performance index. By this, that means it can optimize the multi-responses into a single response, and this single response is nothing but the MPI, which can be used to, okay, larger this MPI will be the better will be the performance output. Okay. So in general, in a fuzzy logic system, two models are used. One is Mamdani fuzzy model, other one is Sugeno fuzzy model. The selection of these two models depends on the fuzzy reasoning and formulation of fuzzy if-then rules. So in this case, in our case, we have adopted this Mamdani fuzzy logic system, okay, which is based on the collection of if-then rules with both fuzzy antecedent and consequent predicts. Okay, so the benefit of this Mamdani fuzzy logic model is that the rule base can be usually provided by an expert, and hence to a certain degree it is translucent to explanation and study. And also because of its ease, this Mamdani fuzzy logic model or system is most commonly used technique for solving many real world problems. Okay, so this Mamdani system is used to estimate the performance index of the multi-performance characteristics here. Okay, this whole system, fuzzifier, inference engine, the knowledge base, that is fuzzy rule base, and membership function, defuzzifier. This is the whole system where you are giving the input, we are getting the output here. Okay, so the methodology for the development of this Mamdani fuzzy model involves the following steps. One is selection of input and output variables first. Okay, so we have to select the input and output variables. So that is the first step. You see here, that means in our study, the input variables for fuzzy systems are mean size, concentration, thermal conductivity, and the output is multi-response performance index. Okay, so these inputs were taken in the form of the linguistic variables in a certain interval. Definitely for the output also you have taken the, okay, that means the fuzzy intervals, okay, in a different ranges. Okay, then the second step is we have to select the membership functions. Okay, so the linguistic values are expressed in the form of the fuzzy sets. Okay, in general, people are using triangular or trapezoidal membership functions. Here we are using the triangular membership function because of their simplicity and computational efficiency. So in our proposed model, we have taken each input 3 membership function for mean size, concentration and thermal conductivity. We have adopted 3 membership functions, triangular membership functions, and the output we have taken 9 membership functions. Okay, so the system input variables are converted into the linguistic values depending on the grade of membership to the linguistic variables here. So the triangular membership functions, whatever you have adopted here, so then we are going for the formulation of the linguistic fuzzy rule base. We have adopted 27 fuzzy rule base, but the relation between the input and the output are expressed in the form of the if and then rules. Okay, so as per the fuzzy system, if the inputs are x1, x2, and x3, and each input has 3 membership functions, therefore the number of rules can be framed as 27. So we have framed the 27 rules as per our expert. So then we have formed this MPI. Okay. So after that, what happened? So finally we went for the defuzzification. So in this, it is a fuzzy dual pair. The defuzzification. What it will do? It will convert the fuzzy values into a crisp output. Okay, using a centroid of area method or weighted average method. By this method, that means we are getting this MPI for each that means experiment. So finally, we got the MPI, and as you know, that means what has happened. Larger the MPI is the better the performance characteristic. That will give the optimum factor level. So by this, we have optimized the parameters 20 volt voltage, pulse on time 70 microsecond, off time 15 microsecond, feed rate this much, and a mean size of 123 almost nanometer. This is about that means multi-response optimization we did by using the fuzzy logic for the nanoparticles characteristics. And I shown in the book this published in CRC Press previously I showed. And these are the various universities. My book is available in MIT, in Stanford, Harvard, Cambridge, ETH Zurich, then Oxford University, Purdue, University of California, Berkeley, Cornell, Ohio, then Columbia. These universities are available, and further, more than these universities also, my book is available. Our book is available in various universities. These are the top libraries in our country. By this, I can conclude this lecture. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us your time, even if you are ill.
Yeah, actually, madam, I am not suffering. I am not suffering well. Why? Because sorry, I am suffering. That means from this herpes and also with the chicken pox reactivated. No, so for the last 4-5 days, I am so much trouble.
Yes,
Full
sir.
painful in my whole one part of the body. So it become very tough for me to present this in this scenario. But anyway, by God's grace, all of us.
We are very grateful that after being ill, also you have been so cooperative. And thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Any questions? Anybody wants to ask, sir?
Yes, please, please.
Sir?
Yes, please.
You can ask, sir. Unmute yourself.
Good morning, sir.
Yes. Good morning.
Sir, hoping that you will recover soon, sir, for fully.
Thank you.
Sir, actually, I want to know about fuzzy because I am also doing my in the PhD work regarding fuzzy.
Okay.
Crack detection, fuzzy I am applying in crack detection of composite laminated beams.
Yes.
So my question is that only crack detection I am using fuzzy, and I am using Mamdani fuzzy, hybrid fuzzy.
Okay.
Where I am using triangular, Gaussian, and trapezoidal, both of them, and J-wave.
Okay.
So can it be applied to the non-cracked structures? So likewise, non-cracked structures. Actually, I'm using for crack detection, crack diagnosis.
Okay.
So if it is a for structural health monitoring, if it is a intact structure, how the fuzzy can be applied to that structure?
Okay.
Any,
That
any
means
suggestions?
you are telling that the non-cracked structure, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That means the structure which is not a cracked.
Not cracked, sir. Actually, it is a intact structure. Suppose actually I'm laminating all those layers. Basically, I'm using glass epoxy and laminating all those layers. So in that glass epoxy, with the implication of cracks, I'm finding out where is the crack position, where is the crack depth.
Yes, yes.
So that part is
so
quite understandable.
what is your objective for that one? The non-crack you are telling. What is the objective you want to study for that structure?
So how much frequency should be in free vibration that the body is not going to deform or not going to delaminate?
That means you want to study the frequency of the vibration. You are telling, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, that means if you want to go for the frequency, that means only single objective. For single objective, is it required to go for this fuzzy logic?
So is it not? It is not feasible.
No. See, suppose fuzzy logic. Suppose if you are integrating all the responses, then combining into a single, that will be useful. But if it is a single response, that means there are other kind of techniques which will be very much suited to adopt those things. Why you will go for fuzzy logic and become and making the process as a cumbersome?
Actually, that's the thing I'm.
No, actually, what happened if it is a single objective optimization problem? So I think so. There are a lot of techniques are available, but this fuzzy logic that means it's not required for that one. Why? Because it will make a lot of cumbersome for you.
Okay, so I should must add another parameters also.
Yes. No, if your objective, suppose if it is a two objectives, then I will tell you can go for that one. Why? Because as we know, any event or any process, okay, that is changing continuously. Okay, we cannot say that it is either true or false. That is the main the fuzzy system, right?
Yes, sir.
So that this means what? That means we have to carry out those activities in a fuzzy manner. That if it contains at least two objectives, as per my knowledge, you can go for that fuzzy logic system. Otherwise, you can go for other options. It becomes very cumbersome. Only single objective means not required at all.
Sir, if I go for the vibration and buckling both.
Then it is possible. Then it is possible. You can go and you can optimize, and also this process can be used to predict. Usually it predicts, and also you can compare with the experimental. That is also good.
Well, experimental results I am having.
So
I can go for both crack detection and with non-crack.
Yes, sure. If
vibration
you have more than one objective, that means you are most preferred.
Okay, thank you, sir. That is the way. Actually, I was listening to that, listening to your talk right now.
Yes,
so
yes.
very
now, what happened regarding in our work? No, it is a purely experimental work. Whatever I projected, you saw, right? So
yes,
it is I think so. It is a very new approach we have adopted in our nanomaterials. For when we are producing nanomaterial and characterizing nanomaterials in-house, then adopting this the fuzzy logic system to optimize, it is very kind of a new approach. People are using fuzzy logic in various ways, but in types of the nanomaterials characterization, we think that it is a very new kind of approach we are adopting here.
Sure, sir. Actually, I am finding lots and lots of paper regarding structural health monitoring, not this kind of optimization. It is more curious to know about all those things.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we have another lecture about optimization tomorrow. You can also you can attend that session and know about optimization more.
Yeah. Then any other questions from the audience side, please, so that I can also have some improvement in these areas. Please have some questions. I think so. Devasmita madam, is a new kind of technique we are adopting to produce nanomaterial.
Yes, sir.
So people already working, but in terms of nanotechnology, it is a new kind of approach recently explored.
especially the copper nanoparticles. I have also heard, means first time I have heard
Yes.
the.
So this and also my one small announcement for this work. Recently, one patent has been granted. That means whatever our Dalasmita madam has briefed my biodata regarding this work, and that patent, whatever it has been granted, no, it is fully related to this technique. And this technique we have developed at a cost of almost 2 lakhs. At a cost of almost 2 lakhs, and presently this technique in our market it is available nearly 75 lakhs, okay, commercially. But as per our thinking, we have innovated in such a fashion, we made it to 2 lakhs, and that technique became patented recently. And one company from USA, that is US Nanolab, they are coming forward and they wants to purchase this setup for their production of nanoparticles.
So that is a great achievement, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Very cost effective now. Any other questions anybody has for sir?
Please ask some questions so that it will be very good for us. Please.
Any more questions?
So, if there is no further questions, madam, shall we wind up?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. So thank you so much, sir, for the nice session, and take care of your health. We'll meet again.
Thank you, madam, for your bless and
Stay safe, sir.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
thank you, madam. Shall I leave now?
Yes, sir.